You are right. I totally, completely missed that. Let's cut that.
Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of Cinema Decon, deconstructing and overthinking the movies of our younger years. My name is Steve, and on this podcast, we will revisit the movies that we keep in the back part of our minds as flawless masterpieces, untouchable by any criticism, and hopefully they stay that way. Join us as we rewatch a randomly selected movie from our list of 300 plus from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. With me on this journey is my co-host, a guy who always has complete faith in whatever the government tells him, Aaron. How are you tonight, Aaron?
Oh, it's been a very busy couple of weeks. And I know it seems like I say that every single episode, but this last few weeks was absolutely brutal. I'm pretty sure I still have laundry piling up from the last time we recorded an episode.
It has been quite busy. We took an unscheduled hiatus between Idiocracy and now pretty much everything happened.
Yeah, all the things.
All the things. And it was like, oh, yeah, we have a movie to do. We should go do that.
Yeah.
But it's good to be back. So.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
For our literal tens of viewers out there. Which, of course, I say that jokingly because, surprisingly, we have more than that.
A big thank you out there, actually, to all who listened to our Idiocracy episode. The episode crushed previous numbers. Weirdly, it became extremely popular with at least a small demographic of crowd, and 3 times the number of downloads on that particular episode. That's pretty awesome. So thank you all.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks a lot for that. That's really cool.
Glad you all seem to enjoy it.
They like money.
Wait, there's money involved? Whoa. Wait.
You guys are getting paid? All right.
We do have a patron.
That is true.
He may or may not have been a prior guest, but that doesn't matter.
That's classified.
The Patreon is out there.
Yeah, that's classified information. All right. So what we do here at Cinema Decon is a rewatch of an old movie in the hopes that they are still as good as we remember them. Then Steve and I meet up, talk about it, point out our high and low parts, then give it a rank and place on our mega list.
Before we watch our target movie, we first record our memories and recollections. Then we proceed to go and watch that movie. So far, our memories have been both perfect and completely wrong at the same time. Today's movie is the 2005 film Good Night and Good Luck, directed by George Clooney, written by George Clooney and Grant Heslov, starring George Clooney, David Strathairn, Jeff Daniels, and Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, Clooney with the hat trick. This week's episode is brought to you by McCarthy's Fine Jewelry. Tired of having to hide your marriage from your boss? McCarthy's specialty Incognito line features a completely clear band and setting for the discriminating adult that wants to keep their job. McCarthy's Fine Jewelry. Show your love without showing your hand.
It's so apt.
Do you think that went over well?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it's really a good... So, Aaron, this may be a short pre-watch, but what are your recollections of Good Night and Good Luck?
Since I have never seen this movie, my only recollection is from when I've watched something that has referenced it. I do recall an episode of Scrubs where the janitor takes over the mic and basically does a good night and good luck over the screen. And that's the first thing that came to mind when it said good night and good luck. I'm like, Dr. Jan Itor. Good night and good luck. Love that movie.
I had never seen this until I was dating my wife, and she was a big fan of it because she watched this in college in her film school. It's about the McCarthyism and the journalism ethics and standards during that time, like
during the blacklist.
As Joseph McCarthy is getting crazier and crazier, the journalists are like, at what point do our ethics kick back on this? This is getting absurd. And it all revolves around Edward R. Murrow, played by David Strathairn. Edward Murrow would end his shows, good night and good luck. That's his sign off. So that's where that comes from. But it's all behind the scenes of whatever 60 Minutes or whatever. I can't remember what the show is, but it's behind the scenes in the writer's room and the producer's room of that show. So really, really cool. And I think it's all in black and white too, if I remember right.
Yeah. From what it looks like.
And I think Robert Downey Jr. might be in there somewhere.
Yeah. There's just looking at the cast of it. Yeah. George Clooney, Jeff Daniels, Alex Borstein, Robert Downey Jr., Tom McCarthy, aptly named, Tate Donovan. Interesting. Yeah.
I remember watching it with Michelle, and I was blown away. Like, why have I never seen this before? This is fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one again. Finally a good excuse to watch it, because it's definitely not like a rewatchable one like we just saw Idiocracy, where you could kind of watch it over and over again. Oh, this is definitely a watch it and pay attention, and it's a historical drama. So.
Oh, and Frank Langella's in it. Nice.
Oh, I like Frank Langella. Yeah, he's a good actor.
So excellent. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this. I like these types of movies.
Clooney did direct it too. Writer, director, and actor in it. Yeah. All right, so short pre-watch, but worth it. And we will now go off and watch Good Night and Good Luck.
Dr. Jan Itor. Good night and good luck. Good movie.
We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof, and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine, and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to associate, to speak, and to defend the causes that were for the moment unpopular. This is no time for men who oppose Senator McCarthy's methods to keep silent, or for those who approve. We can deny our heritage and our history, but we cannot escape responsibility for the results. We proclaim ourselves, indeed, as we are, the defenders of freedom wherever it continues to exist in the world, but we cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home. The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad, and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear. He merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Good night, and good luck.
And we're back. We have watched Good Night and Good Luck. We got the movie, 100% correct, more or less, with our pre-watch. It's really a straight to the point movie. Other than I got the name of his show wrong. I said 60 Minutes, and
yes,
it's See It Now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this was a good watch. Perfect hour and a half runtime, pretty quick, and extremely relevant today.
Yes. And it was a very good watch, especially for pretty much any history buffs, because it seems to be almost it's less of a dramatization and more of kind of a retelling of actually what happened from specific points of views.
Yeah, it feels like if you were watching a documentary,
exactly,
and there were reenactments, that they keep cutting to. That's what the entire movie felt like. The reenactments inside of a documentary with amazing jazz performances every 20 minutes.
Oh yes. That's some good stuff. So but for me, I knew the whole concept behind the McCarthyism and everything. Obviously I'm a little young for that, so I didn't experience it, but I've seen a couple different films and documentary type shows on it. And this gave another kind of angle to it, and about, the people that were fighting against, not just fighting against communism, but actually fighting against McCarthyism and the crackdown of, if you're not with us, then you're automatically the suspect to be the enemy kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which is definitely relevant today.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed this kind of the behind the scenes look of a 1950s news show. That was really fascinating. Just how they filmed it, whether it's the news show or it's the interviews he was doing, and the writer's room dealing with the higher ups. I mean, it was just a nice nice insight to that little business.
Yeah, and it goes back to like the little things where they were doing their 1950s version of CGI with the windowsill,
Exactly.
trying to show it, looking like it was outside. I was like watching I've seen a couple different YouTubes of 50s style CGI, where it's not really CGI but camera tricks at that point, on how they got certain shots, whether it's like the Hitchcock style dual focus lens, or I can't remember the name of the product, but where they use tin foil on a 45-degree angle on a stained piece of glass to make it reflect from another angle, so you can show a small image instead of a large one or something. But how they did in this particular one, how they did the screen, which I'm guessing that's what they did on this, was they probably had a mirror behind that fake window seal and just pointed it something like a projector. I can't
remember what that's called. It's the same thing they do with the Haunted Mansion in Disney to make all the ghosts. It's I can't remember the name of the trick, but I
can't either. But it's the 45-degree glass. Mm-hmm. Something's ghost. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
Pepper's ghost.
Pepper's ghost. I think that's it. Yeah, but also the way they did the interview, like with Liberace, it was all pre-taped, and they just had they had the cue cards there, and he's reading in. But we can get to that.
I have a note on that too. So.
Yeah. So the movie opens up at a kind of an award ceremony or some sort of ceremony where Edward R. Murrow is the keynote speaker. Before they introduce him, there's a nice jazz playing, and the camera's panning around to all these smiling faces, which we don't know yet, but that's our center group. Because as much as this is a movie on Edward R. Murrow, they really do focus on that core group of writers, producers, the showmakers. Of this show.
It kind of makes you think they're kind of the Rat Pack type group, but in like New York media instead of LA Hollywood kind of thing. I definitely like the old timey style. First of all, the entire movie's in black and white. Spoiler alert. But like the old time, they had like the old time Warner Brothers logo and all the fonts that come up. And when the camera comes in and you've got it's panning around showing all of them. You've got the jazz, that smooth jazz music, like the lounge jazz music going over fame. And you can sort of hear the muffled talking in the background, but it's overshadowed by just the jazz. Mm-hmm. It gave me just this scene alone just gave me a huge reminiscent vibe of like the Ink and Paint Club from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
There you go. Yeah, you see Robert Downey Jr. Excuse me. You see Robert Downey Jr., Tate Donovan, Patricia Clarkson, and several others that are in that main group, all smiling and taking pictures. And then Jeff Daniels introduces Edward Murrow, who takes the stage, played by David Stratham. He gives kind of half of a speech, which we come back to the second half at the end of the movie. It's your first introduction to Edward R. Murrow, to people who don't really know who he is or whatever. And it's not like a comfy grandpa sort of thing. He's firm. He's almost angry. It's a warning. The whole speech is a warning about television itself. And if you don't use it properly, if you just keep it as a means of entertainment only, just for goofiness, then you're wasting it, and it's your own fault. The people. It's your fault if you allow the institutions to waste it. But you don't get the full context of his speech until the end, where the whole McCarthy stuff plays out.
Yeah, because this is technically in the timeline. This is at the end of the timeline. This takes place. This 58? Award ceremony is October 25th, 1958.
58.
So 5 days after his infamous first show running, and then after this whole thing, we actually bounce back in the timeline to October 14th.
This is all in the same year?
No, not in the same year. Sorry.
No, I think the award ceremony was years later.
You are right. I totally, completely missed that. Let's cut that. I have it on here, 58, 53, and I just glanced at it in my notes. And I guess I didn't even realize that in there. But yeah, it's...
To go with our show slogan, math is hard.
Yeah, math are hard. So yes. So we bump back about 5 years.
Yeah, the next scene has people coming to work, and there's a screen scroll that gives the viewer a description of the Red Scare and McCarthyism, what was actually going down in people's heads at the time.
Mm-hmm.
As they go into a bustling TV newsroom, and again, pans over all the key players. And this is where we then meet Joe and Shirley. Joe played by Robert Downey Jr. Shirley is Patricia Clarkson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say up front, it is kind of the weakest point of the movie, you know, their thing.
Yeah.
It had no bearing on the actual stuff.
And again, that kind of goes back to this not being over dramatized. This seems more like a documentary than this may be exactly how it was.
Their story is true. They were secretly married and so Joe and Shirley are married, but in quotes, nobody knows that they're married.
Which, they kind of hinted at that at the beginning.
Yeah, they did.
They didn't come out right and say the whole thing, but they definitely hinted at it.
Well, they hinted at them being together. They were dating.
And then later on, we find out.
What they're talking about, though, is the loyalty oath.
Mm-hmm.
A loyalty oath that was given to Joe, Robert Downey Jr.'s character. It's pretty much a loyalty oath to America, to I am not a communist thing, and if he doesn't sign it, he gets fired. It's a great intro, but it's never brought back up ever. That loyalty oath thing just kind of floats away. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised they didn't come back to that in some way.
Well, apparently even Murrow signed it, so maybe that was the whole thing. Was they brought it up? They didn't like the fact that they were being forced to sign it in order to keep their jobs and be able to keep doing what they're doing. They decided to just bite the bullet and get it over with. I mean, technically, they weren't lying by signing it or anything. So I see their point, though.
Yeah, it could have been a good kind of kick in the rear to them. Just that loyalty oath was the last straw. We're doing this,
we're tired of having to prove to you that we are who we say we are, kind of thing, just because you tell us to.
But they weren't going for revisionist history, though. I think Clooney was trying to be as historically accurate as he could be.
Yeah. So then, after they go back and forth with the loyalty oath, pan over to a conference room where everyone's sitting around watching a film strip of a speech, and it was a senatorial debate.
Well, they're talking about which projects to put on the show at this point.
They were watching the film of a speech, and then when they stop it, they're talking about how they want to fit it into the show and what they want to talk about. Like one of the things that is brought up is senatorial debate based on the comments from the previous show.
Yeah, with the Secretary of Agriculture, and they couldn't. Yeah. They were trying to get him back on. That's right. There's a quick mention of McCarthy, but then once the room clears, Murrow brings up to Fred Friendly, George Clooney's character, the producer, an Air Force lieutenant named Milo Radulovich, who was kicked out of the Air Force for his dad subscribed to newspapers back home in Serbia.
And basically, because he is one of the U.S. Air Force regulations, I actually have that written down, U.S. Air Force Regulation 35-62, that he was deemed a security risk for association with communist or communist sympathizers, which is what they deemed his father and sister were for reading these newspapers.
The crux of it all was that he was denied due process. Yeah. So it's one thing for the accusation, but then you're supposed to have a trial, you display the evidence, and you get to defend yourself.
Just the evidence by itself. The evidence was kept in a sealed envelope that was never disclosed to anybody. They just pretty much held up a thing and said, here's the evidence. Trust me on it.
From a UCMJ perspective, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there's even in there, you do have less rights as a service member in that realm, but you still have the right to defend yourself and the right to defend your actions against whatever evidence. They can't just have a sealed envelope and say, you're kicked out, trust us. Yeah, it even in the military doesn't work that way. I do have a note here, though. Smokers, pipes, and cigarettes everywhere. That writer's room was a hot box of just smoke. The first thing that came to my mind when I saw that scene.
Good old Mad Men stuff.
Yeah.
I do. It was one of the things that the Air Force did say that he could keep his job if he publicly denounced his father and sister, to which Radulovich pretty much told him to take a hike.
And I looked into Radulovich in real life, and he pretty much, his dad was literally just subscribing to papers from his hometown to keep in touch with events of his hometown.
Yeah. I'll give it one thing. This is one of the few movies that half the time I was watching it, I was Googling and wikiing all the things that were going on because I wanted to know more about it. I had heard of some things like this. Like I had heard of it, the start of it. I didn't recognize Radulovich's name, but once I started reading it, I remembered it.
Yeah, so they decide to send some reporters to his hometown, try and get him on film and try and get some more information and make a show out of it. And then the next scene, they're reviewing the actual film of Lieutenant Radulovich. It's pretty compelling because he's giving a personal speech about, so he's being blamed for something his father did. Now, are his American kids going to be blamed for something he didn't do? Mm-hmm. So it's very compelling little video, little interview from them.
Yeah. And again, this was the actual footage of Radulovich. This wasn't like pretty much any of the characters outside the main cast when they were on camera. It was the actual footage.
Yeah, good use of archive footage there.
So you look in the cast list and like Eisenhower is in the cast list. Liberace himself. How many times can you put Liberace and Eisenhower in the same movie?
And Clooney.
Other than that one time. Other than that one time, which we don't speak of.
But after they watched that film, they were actually showing it to Jeff Daniels' character, which I don't even have his name. I don't know what the dude's name is.
Yeah, Sig Nicholson. Appears to be their boss.
Which I have a note on because it's kind of weird because after this scene, you don't see him until the end of the movie. He disappears. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Daniels literally just disappears throughout all the good McCarthy stuff in the middle. He's non-existent. But this is a good scene for him because he's playing the corporate, middleman. He's not the owner of the company, but he is the higher authority of this show. And they're talking journalistic ethics. Editorialize or don't editorialize. And this is where it starts getting into really relevant stuff with real life. Is it the point of the press to just repeat what the government dictates, or do they have an obligation to provide both views of sides? And do they have their own freedom to provide their own editorialized opinion on those two sides?
And then there's obviously, from the owner's perspective, there's obviously the fear that during this whole scare, just the concept of being the station that airs both sides would make people think that they themselves are sympathizers. If they're airing if they're going to tell Milo's story and Milo's accused of being a communist, then they're going to assume, well, then you must love communists. So now we're going to stop listening to you, kind of thing, which is the whole thing of McCarthyism.
And that's when the sponsors will bolt.
Exactly, because they even brought that up when he was talking about wanting to do this episode. Is one of the things that Sig said was that their main sponsor, Alcoa, wouldn't pay for the ads for that episode.
Did you know who Alcoa was when he said it?
I did not.
And neither did I.
When I first heard the name, it sounded like a pet food company.
Pet food, like Alpo. It's America Aluminum Company, I think.
Yeah, Aluminum Company, Corporation of America.
There it is. Yep. Yeah.
Alcoa. But I mean, $3,000 for the ads on that show tells you how much inflation has risen since the 1950s. So that and to get around this, Murrow and Fred agree that they'll split the ads just to get that show out, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. It leads to a good joke as they're all leaving the room. It says, I guess Fred's not going to buy his kids any gifts for Christmas this year, and don't worry, he's Jewish.
Don't worry, don't tell him that. He still celebrates Christmas.
Yeah, don't tell Fred he loves Christmas. Fred is George Clooney, say the producer, and I like his character. His name is Fred Friendly, and not to put a pun on it, but he's a very friendly guy. He seems very level-headed, logical, on the right side of pretty much every argument we see, and just everyone seems to like him without any fear.
They actually made that pun in the movie about him being a friendly guy.
I did like, though, the in that particular meeting with Jeff Daniels, though, George Clooney has the line of, well, we're all in this together. And Jeff Daniels shuts him down. He's like, spare me, Fred. Any lines of how we're all in this together. Don't insult me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound familiar at all these days.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, they decided to go after the Air Force right at the same time. How convenient. There are two colonels in Fred's office, which he goes to meet.
And at this point, they're wanting to get more information about it so they can tell their story, right?
They're literally just, this story is about you guys. You're involved. You may comment.
Yep.
And the Air Force comes in with the hard press of shut it down.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this. We're going to get his side of the story. We would like to see the evidence that is against him so that we can report on it. And they're basically saying, nope, we strongly urge you to reconsider this because it is without merit.
Yeah, they said that, and that's what they say. It's without merit. But then Clooney comes back at it. Well, how do you know? Have you seen the contents of them? Has anyone seen what's in that envelope?
Who has seen it? Yeah,
it's very weird, very weird. And they keep saying in the background that this is not McCarthy, but then Murrow's like, isn't it?
So then we jump. Basically, they've went ahead and they're going to do the episode. We jump to October 20th, I guess, infamous episode where this all starts.
Yeah, it's a Showtime where they're getting ready to go the. I assume this was live, was it?
Yes,
because the phone's right after and all that stuff. So I mean, it's got to be live. Yeah, good line from Murrow after George Clooney lights his cigarette because Murrow's like, "You think we're going to be all right?" And Fred's like, "Yeah." The funny thing, Freddie, every time you light a cigarette for me, I know you're lying.
Yeah.
But before we talk about the show, those microphones were huge. You see those things?
Mm-hmm.
It was like the size of a pineapple. I want to get one.
I'm sure you can find it somewhere.
I'm sure it's great for podcasting.
Oh yeah, you could reach at least twice as many people with that.
This is where we get a pretty cool behind the scenes look at a 50s news show. So you've got the guys in the booth, but then you've got Clooney actually crouched down below Edward Murrow because there weren't tiny earpieces or anything to talk to the anchors. So Clooney's wearing the headset and giving cues by like tapping Edward Murrow in the shin. That was pretty cool. Good signals and good communication there. You
would think a notepad would be good enough because Murrow most of the time was looks down in his notes anyway. So I don't know if that would be just like time constraints. I'm guessing it was easier than watching a clock on the wall or something.
That could be. Well, they obviously had a rapport. Those two had a system. And David Strathairn crushes it as Ed Murrow.
Oh yes, he does.
I mean, I watched a couple of YouTube videos just to see, and these guys' mannerisms. It's a very, very good performance. He was Oscar nominated for that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a cool intro because everyone's running around quickly, like cutting the film strips together, trying to make make everything done in time. Because anytime they cut away from him, it's always to a tape. Yeah. So they don't ever have anyone live. So they actually have some of the women in there cutting film together as 10 minutes before the episode's ready to air, and he's pretty much asking him, is it going to be ready in time? And this is when the whole every time you light a cigarette, I know you're lying joke.
Yeah, that's it.
Because Fred's like, oh, sure, plenty of time.
Yeah, they're very. I'll say it, I wish our media was still like this. As far as that, he was very straight to the point, well spoken, and just put it all out there in plain spoken facts. Loved that. It was the news. It was facts. It wasn't. I mean, there was editorializing, but it wasn't partisan. It was obvious logic, but straight to the point. This man is being booted from the Air Force without any trial, without any due process, and he doesn't even know what the charges are against him. He's just kicked out. And the Air Force has a chance to rebut. They don't, but these are the facts. Yeah, and they even say anytime, it's like if they wish to comment, we would be happy to accommodate them on this program, which also comes up later. There is a good funny line in there that two colonels make a general. I laughed at that. So he starts the episode, discusses and throws everything out there. They cut to a video of Milo's hometown, and then to a video of Milo's sister, and then finally to the video of Milo himself making the statement that we watched earlier. Yeah. He brought up the big thing about the charges never brought forth to anyone, including his lawyers. His lawyers didn't even know what he was charged with. His lawyer was very compelling too, with what he was saying. Like, in 35 years, I've never seen this. Yeah, it's the biggest farce that he's ever seen in however many years. Finally, gets through the whole thing, finishes off with his wonderful signature, good night and good luck, and then goes off the air. And there's like kind of a lull to where he goes off the air, and they dim the lights, and he just sits there and looks down. And then about 3-4 seconds later, that's when Fred finally tells him we're off, and then everybody starts clapping. Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
They cut that into a very weird and hilarious old commercial.
Kent cigarettes, which I didn't realize it was a commercial until like halfway through it.
Yeah,
it looked like it was an infotainment because he's talking about
the viewers, how wonderful and smart the viewers are, that they would never be tricked by advertising.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about Kent cigarettes and how they're the best filters all around.
Yeah, they're Edward R. Murrow's brand. So
do you know if that's, I don't know. So do you know, did they make that commercial or was that an old commercial?
I do not know. I know the wiki article on Kent cigarettes does not mention Murrow's name. So I don't know if that connection is true, but who knows? It wouldn't surprise me if that was real. Have you seen some of the old like 50s advertising?
Yeah.
It is ridiculous.
Hell, there's a Flintstones, episode where he's pitching cigarettes in black and white. It's pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up when there were still cigarette ads like that, but nothing to this degree.
It reminded me of that one movie, Thank You for Smoking.
Ah, yes.
But it was a commercial before Murrow's other show where he interviews celebrities, I guess. People on People, I think it was called.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've got this fake interview set up with Liberace. Murrow obviously doesn't even want to be there. He's phoning it in, going through the motions. But what's fascinating is the interview with Liberace. Just how they set it up, like we mentioned earlier, with the fake window and the special effects, the pre-recorded interview with the cue cards.
It's one of those things. I wonder, does he do it? Do they send a camera crew out and then get Murrow on the phone beforehand? And he actually initially asks the questions. That way Liberace's really talking to Murrow and really answering Murrow.
I highly doubt it.
Or he answers somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody asks him the questions.
Yeah, like, call me Ed. Yeah. While I'm here, I'm just an associate producer on doing this interview, but call me Ed.
Yeah. But then, and they cut that out, and Murrow's sitting there reading cue cards, telling him what question he's supposed to ask him and what questions to answer. And one of the funny things I noticed on this near the end of the cue cards, he asked him a couple questions, and then he finally says, "Well, we'll let you get back to everyone. We won't bother you anymore." If you looked at the cue cards, there were at least 2 more questions on those cue cards.
Yeah, there was a whole cue card asking about Princess Margaret.
So
I did
you can definitely
that.
tell Murrow was just done. He's like, no, which means they had to quickly cut the tape off before Liberace answered the question.
Well, Liberace on marriage.
So who knows what he said? Wonder why. It's the
Yeah.
strangest. I have no clue.
Well, why even do it live then? I mean, if that's pre-recorded, why can't they just record that?
And maybe this show is pre-recorded, and See It Now is live.
That would make more sense. I mean, it's not like they were waiting on phone calls after the Liberace interview.
It's not a news. I think the whole concept of news is the news is supposed to be live. Anything else,
but once they get done, you've got Ray Weiss waiting in the wings.
which I totally missed that he was even in that movie. When I saw him come up, he's like, "It's Bob."
That man looks creepy in like everything he's in. I'm sorry, but he does. Yeah. But he looked especially creepy here with the black and white, the shadows, and he's got that like Joker smile almost comes out of the shadows. How you doing, Ed? To anybody who hasn't seen Twin Peaks, go watch Twin Peaks. You'll see Ray Weiss.
It's Bob. And then after this whole episode, Don actually comes in.
Ray Weiss plays Don Hollenbeck, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And Don Hollenbeck. Yeah, there's a couple Dons, so we should just. I started writing it as Don, and then when the other Dons came in, I started calling him Hollenbeck. But Hollenbeck comes in to talk to Murrow and discussing how in the media they're calling him a pinko, which was a derogatory term for a communist sympathizer.
Yeah.
During that era, he's talking back and forth about what he thinks the fallout of the whole Milo Radulovich piece is going to be.
Don Hollenbeck is pretty much trying to gauge Murrow and see how deep is he going to get in? Is he going to take a stance against McCarthy and the witch hunt that's going on, or is he just kind of dipping his toe in that water? But it's obvious that Hollenbeck is not handling the press well. Mm-hmm. The negative press from I believe it's the New York Post. A guy named O'Brien keeps writing very poor reviews of his show and calling him a communist sympathizer, and he's really taking it to heart. Man, he looked creepy.
He always looks creepy. I've never seen him in anything where he doesn't give off that thing. And speaking of the other Don, very shortly after, we get a scene where Joe is walking in. I can't remember what. I don't have it written where he was going to do, but he was going with like a DP.
He was walking into the Senate hearings to record the Senate hearings.
That's right. And he gets stopped by Don Serene, played by Robert Knepper.
I knew you would know who that was because I don't know his name, but I just know he's in Heroes and Prison Break.
Yeah.
It's one of those, hey, it's that guy.
And yeah, he'll always be Prison Break to me because that's where I saw him first. But yeah, I always liked him as an actor. He's another one of those guys that I can't picture him as ever being a good guy.
No.
Just because he makes such a good bad guy.
Everything I've seen him in, he's been some sort of shady character.
Yeah.
But this is the first of the government kind of pokes at Murrow's crew saying, hey, we can make things hard for you. Stop what you're doing.
Yeah, he's basically trying to ward him off doing the show. And this is him going to Joe. He's not going to Murrow. He's not going to Fred. He's starting with the underlings, undermine them. And this is when and for another reason is he comes up with the side. Did you know, by the way, that Murrow was on the Soviet payroll in 1935, which may or may not be true. Doesn't matter, but it sure hits Joe for a second. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to walk away. And as he's walking away, he's basically accusing Murrow of being a sympathizer this entire time. And that's why he's running this. And then you're all going to be indicted and shit like that.
Yeah, pretty much it was their only move at that point. Mm-hmm. But then that does get up to the owner of the company or the president of the company. I don't know his exact position, but the next scene is in Mr. Paley's office, who's played by Frank Langella. This is it's kind of a hard press from the top to the show as far as making the show understand what they're taking on. There is a lot of risk here, but the risk is actually not on you. It's not on everybody else. It's on the company, which is me, as in Mr. Paley. He's the one that has to deal with other shows. If the company gets taken down, that's hundreds of jobs. There's a lot at risk here. So know what you're doing.
Exactly. Paley's basically urging them to back off because he doesn't want to get hit with hit by McCarthy or the U.S. government and lose viewership over it. He's trying to insist that McCarthy is going to get investigated by Congress on his own if he goes too far, which Murrow is basically saying, well, he's already gone too far, to which Paley kind of shuts him down. It's like, you know what? I signed your check.
But Murrow doesn't back down. He stays.
No, Murrow does not.
He says, you know what? Gives no ground, and Mr. Paley backs him in the end.
Yeah.
He just says, make sure all your people are clean.
To which we get into the next discussion in the small room about anybody going on for the next episode, which is actually about McCarthy.
Yeah, this is a great scene.
They're basically going around the room saying, this is what we're going to do. You can obviously understand that there's going to get a lot of blowback on this. McCarthy may come after us, but anybody that doesn't want to be involved in it, we understand. If you are going to be involved with it, we need to know if there's any skeletons in your closet, anything that they can use against us. And one of the guys actually gets up and says, I need to recuse myself.
His ex-wife, before they even met, went to meetings and now they're divorced.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most absurd connection, but it goes to show that fear was real in that room.
I once accidentally handed a plastic bag to a communist sympathizer 25 years ago when I worked as a grocery bagger. Kind of mentality where, well, then you're obviously a communist. That's the kind of fear that people had. That's the kind of things people would use against them.
And that particular absurdity of that loose of a connection, but that fear is one of the things that Murrow says, that no, you're not recusing yourself.
We're absolutely going to go forward because the terror is right here in this room. And I like that quote.
Yeah. Yeah. So they all go off. Clooney puts them all on their missions to get information on McCarthy. They're on their research things. And now we get kind of a montage ish where they're looking into his old films, all his old speeches,
listening to his old speeches.
Yeah. Trying to just get anything to use against him as far as his own words.
Even going to the point where like McCarthy, they've got a film of McCarthy discussing a closed hearing speech. So they're discussing the legalities of them airing it because it was a closed hearing speech kind of thing, which they ultimately say, if there's a legal issue, it's on McCarthy because he's the one that actually said it. We're just repeating it.
McCarthy's words just disgusted me as they were saying it. I mean, that man was vile.
I wholeheartedly agree.
And then that scene kind of ends with Murrow writing his closing speech, and he just mentions that it's gonna be referencing Shakespeare. which has much more meaning in a few moments. But then we get some side commentary from Shirley and Joe, where they admit that they are actually married. They're hiding their rings. I think this is when she asks him to take it off.
They're basically talking. Yeah, they're talking about the fall off, and as he's getting dressed, getting ready to the office, she reminds him to remove the ring.
Did Patricia Clarkson look like significantly older than Robert Downey Jr. to you?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if it wasn't just the HD for me, but it was.
And I honestly think it was primarily just the black and white.
It could be.
And Robert Downey Jr. has always looked young. I don't know offhand, but is Patricia Clarkson older than Robert Downey Jr.?
I don't know. I didn't look it up. I just went by looks, and the black and white wasn't kind to her. Yeah, next up we get the actual show that goes after McCarthy. Just as before, they're getting ready for the new show, the pre-production and everything. And Paley calls down with a kind of a funny moment because he gets Ed Murrow on the line as he's sitting at the broadcast desk. And it's like, I got some tickets for the Knickerbockers tonight. You want to go?
Yeah.
I'm a little busy bringing down the network, Bill.
Oh, is that tonight? Well, go on.
But he does say, I'm with you today, Ed, and I'm with you tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'll give him that.
When they start the show, and this is something that kind of jumped out at me as far as he gave so much respect to his viewers because he says, I request your permission to read from a script.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to see that today, whether it's CNN or Fox or whomever. You're not going to see that level of respect for the viewers themselves to say, this is so important that I have prepared remarks and I request your permission to read them. It's classy. It's very classy.
Mm-hmm. He basically starts off with just a description of what he's going to do, who he's going to talk about. If Mr. McCarthy would like to rebuke, would like to send of a rebuttal, whatever. English is hard too, damn it. Would like to rebuke any of these statements. We fully welcome them, and we will allow that on this show. So he has a huge disclaimer. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to report on McCarthy. If McCarthy or his people want to say anything, we'll absolutely give them all the time in the world, or, equal time to do so. And I like that too. That used to still have sometimes, but it's not, I don't know. It just didn't seem as trustworthy nowadays.
Well, especially the type of rebuttal. I mean, it was the rebuttal. Once we get to it, was a video that was pre-made. It wasn't like we're going to have you on to rebut for 45 seconds, make your point, and we're going to interrupt you while you do it. No, that's today's news.
No, it was you send us a tape of your rebuttal and we will air it. So that was kind of cool, but we don't see that yet.
No.
So now he's basically talking, he's going through, and just all he's really doing is showing clips of McCarthy's speeches, talking about his attacks on the ACLU, or his statements about how the ACLU was considered a terrorist organization or something. And then he rebuts with comments about how it was never classified as such by the government or anyone he could find.
Shining a light on his shady tactics in those hearings, that you were part of the Boy Scouts. Did you know that the Boy Scouts are tagged as a communist group now? Like, no, I didn't know that. Well, they are. Does that make you a communist now? It's just a complete lie to try and get something out of them.
I was going to say, and before we go too much farther, one of the funny notes on this was, I can't remember the exact reason because it didn't seem like a thing at the time, but they decided to turn the phones off.
Well, the phones were going crazy before the show started.
Oh, yeah, before the show. So they decided to turn the phones off so they weren't distracted during the show.
Which was a good setup.
It seems like a little throwaway thing at the time. Like, okay, this is just normal, that you're not going to come back to this. So they go through this whole show. After the show goes off the air, they're immediately expecting phone calls, and not a single phone rings. And they're looking at the phone. Like the episode goes down, and Murrow literally stares at his phone, and nothing. Because I'm assuming he's expecting a call from Paley immediately.
Yeah.
And then everybody else is like, anybody else got a phone? And they're all checking him. He's like, nothing. They're dead. And then all of a sudden, the intern in the back, should I turn the phones back on, sir? And they all just stare at him like, yeah, you should turn the phones back on. So he flips the switch, and every single phone lights up. And it was great.
That episode, though, does end with a fantastic speech of Murrow where he's quoting Shakespeare and the Fault in Our Stars. Mm-hmm. And it ends in just about 30, 40 seconds of him pretty much laying it all out there, that these tactics are they're un-American, they're shady, and it's not necessarily McCarthy's fault. It's everyone's fault for letting him do it. But
he's taking advantage of it.
He's exploiting it. He's exploiting it.
Yeah.
So the fault is not in our stars, Brutus. It's in ourselves. It's a good speech.
Mm. And then basically right after the phones start ringing, and then they show a scene. They cut back to Hollenbeck on air, where he's
praising Murrow.
Actually falls in line. Yeah, and he's like, I think I speak for everyone here, where I say I wholeheartedly stand by everything that Mr. Murrow just said. Which, for somebody that's scared of what the public's thinking of him and worried about the press, that was kind of a genuine moment for him.
Yeah, it's a ballsy statement.
Of just forgetting about what backlash he might get for a second and say something real, kind of thing. To which, he falls back into the worrying about it shortly thereafter. But.
Yeah, they all go out for drinks to celebrate the episode, and they're all drinking till around 3:30 in the morning when the early edition newspapers come out, and they send Shirley off to Shirley and Joe, but they tell Shirley to go get them to go get the newspapers, and there's a nice awkward silence until the newspapers return. But they get those early edition newspapers, and the New York Times praises the show and good reviews all around, brave and all that good stuff, and then. Poor Don Hollenbeck is hit hard by the New York Post again,
and he asked her to read it.
Yeah,
he's like, "What about O'Brien? What about O'Brien's column?" And Shirley's like, "You know what? Don't worry about him." He's like, "Well, read it. I want to hear it. I want to read it." So she grabs it and starts reading it, and it's not good. It's primarily centered on Hollenbeck, it seems, and not really on Murrow.
Yeah, it was a complete deflection. Who I don't know who that O'Brien guy is when he wrote that article, but I mean, he barely mentions Murrow, and the whole thing is just a hit piece on O'Brien or on Hollenbeck.
To me, it made me think for a while that Hollenbeck was like, you know what, screw this guy, I want to hear it anyway, and I don't care what he says, but I want to hear it. It turns out later that no, I think he was taking it a lot harder than what I initially thought.
Yeah, he thought he made a stand with another giant with Murrow, and that he was kind of untouchable in that moment, that he was going to be praised for his bravery as well. But then, nope, O'Brien crushed him, and he took it to heart. Then we go back to the office the next day. You got Fred in the elevator. Mr. Paley, kind of joins him on the elevator. Gets a bit awkward.
Yeah, that was a very awkward scene. Because Paley is kind of staring at him for a bit.
Yeah.
And Fred's just trying to make small talk and look away. And then Paley finally looks away.
But then we quickly get to the newsroom again. One of the guys makes an announcement that Lieutenant Radulovich has been reinstated. So the Secretary of the Air Force reversed his decision.
Yeah, and basically stated he's no longer considered a security risk. To which, everybody's happy about. They thought that it was kind of a win. And then Fred walks over to the gentleman that confessed about his ex-wife who went to the meetings before, that the CBS lawyers want to talk to him. Tries to assure him that they're talking to everyone, but I have a feeling that's not really the case.
Yeah, it doesn't really come to anything.
It doesn't. I think it was more just to kind of, again, set the tone.
Yeah, they are constantly coming at. Yeah.
Because now it's CBS is worried.
Yeah, because he actually rejoins the group later on when they're doing a film review of a Pentagon lady who worked apparently in the code room, whose name was Annie Lee Moss.
Annie Lee Moss, yep.
Yeah, so she's in the hot seat at the Senate committee and being accused of being a communist.
Yeah, once again, all the actual footage, which is really cool. They had an undercover FBI agent that went to communist meetings. That was a quote unquote dues paying communist, card carrying communist, that named her in a list. And then they say that they have corroborating evidence of it, but they cannot, but just like the Radulovich case, they won't produce the evidence and they won't produce the witness because the witness is still undercover.
And that's what they decide to go with as far as the show. Not is she or is she a communist? Their whole focus of their next show is going to be her constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Which is the smart move. But one thing they did notice is that I guess McCarthy, he led the meeting, but he asked 7 questions and then left. And so they have a shot of him as an empty chair. We get to see more of that Senate hearing. It's when McCarthy leaves, more senators start standing up and defending her due process rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was one in particular that was going back and forth that he wants to be able to see the evidence against her, and that conviction by hearsay is just a complete farce. And he gets shot down by, I believe it was Cohen, who ends up being McCarthy's lawyer because of it being an active undercover FBI. And they're questioning her a lot about how she used to work in the cafeteria, and then she got bumped up to the code room. It just basically they're fishing for
her
something to say something that they can jump on and say, well, then that must make you a communist.
Off to the side, Don Hollenbeck confronts Ed Murrow and asks him to go after O'Brien. Murrow says he can't. He says, I can't take on McCarthy and Hearst, which was a nice throw to William Randolph Hearst, who ran all the newspapers. Only mention to him, though. That's it.
Yeah, Hollenbeck's kind of freaking out. And he's basically trying to, calm down and say, you'll weather this.
But then we get to the actual McCarthy rebuttal. As we mentioned earlier, he submitted a videotape. Murrow calls it, said his only play is to go after the host.
His credibility.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. He made a very, very well-spoken speech, but filled with false modesty, false humility. I have no claim on leadership, that kind of crap.
Yeah.
But then he goes into making all these claims against Murrow, again, without outlining any proof. He was part of a communist organization because I said so.
And prior to airing the statement, Murrow flat out said, "We're going to play Mr. McCarthy's rebuttal. We're not going to say anything to rebuke his tape at this time during this episode. So we're just going to play it, and that'll be it," kind of thing.
That's the way it should be done.
Yeah,
I did note a trope here, which is people in the street gathered around a TV sales window to watch a TV event.
We didn't get the newsy boy extra read all about.
No, we didn't. That would have
saddened.
That would have fit.
All about it. McCarthy's investigated by Senate, or the spinning newspaper. After a quick commercial for Alcoa.
Yeah, the aluminum company of
America.
We get to the Murrow counter rebuttal show. Ed Murrow pretty much says he denies it all in a very classy way and said that McCarthy just proved our point. If you disagree with them, you are automatically a communist.
Yeah,
that's their go-to. It's just kind of what they do.
Yeah, he made it a point that McCarthy didn't rebuke anything we said. He just came after me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to rebuke everything he said. And he goes point by point of all the claims that McCarthy made and explains the truth behind him, or his side.
Yeah. And he has a good anecdote about apparently the socialist that dedicated a book to him. And the reason he dedicated a book to him is not because he shared his views, but because he didn't share his socialist views, and they were able to, as adults, discuss it.
Exactly.
Point and counterpoint, actually have a disagreement in a civilized manner and discuss ideas that are different. Whoa.
Yeah, which was a huge no-no for the Red Scare. You couldn't have a cup of coffee with a communist unless you were a communist sympathizer in the eyes of McCarthy.
Yeah, just stupid.
Yeah.
But the papers next day come in and, I don't say next day. I'll say next scene. I don't know how much time passes between that rebuttal show and when the guy comes in saying the Senate's going to investigate McCarthy. They make it sound like it's the next day.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't know either because we only had the call outs for those 3 dates.
Yeah.
It never called out the specific date any other time.
I got to assume some time passes between one show between that show and then the papers coming out saying that. So,
if not years or so, yeah.
Yeah. So the Senate's going to investigate McCarthy, and they're all quite happy about it.
This is and then everybody's kind of celebrating again, taking it as a win when Fred gets a call.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And kind of starts to get he looks really spooked. Because everybody else in the room is happy, and then Fred, answered the phone call and just kind of goes deadpan.
This was a good point of actual suspense because you don't know where it's going. It could be that someone got tagged as a communist. People are about to get arrested. My first thought was, sure, McCarthy's going to get investigated, but that was part of a deal that someone in the newsroom is going down.
Yeah. Or maybe that guy was going to get tagged for his ex-wife kind of thing.
Yeah. Like who's the fault?
If I'm going down, you're going down with me. He gets off that phone. He goes over to whisper to Murrow, who also looks kind of spooked. And then it cuts to smooth jazz outro. And we find out through a voiceover of Murrow talking about Don Hollenbeck, who was found dead, committed suicide.
Yeah, that was a shame. Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, so he just couldn't take the pressure and couldn't take the accusations and everything anymore.
The obituary, I guess it's kind of an obituary that Murrow gives, says that he had been sick for quite a while. So I don't know if that's alluding to something else that maybe they just didn't talk about in the movie, because the movie makes it look like it's all pressure from the newspapers and he just can't take the pressure. But with suicide, you never know. He could have been sick. It could have been other things.
To answer your question about the time passage, this would have been around June 22nd, 1954. So this is quite a ways, or this is a year after.
Wow.
Or almost a year, October to June. So about 9 months.
Is that by McCarthy's investigation or Hollenbeck's suicide?
Hollenbeck's suicide.
Because they may not necessarily be. I mean, the movie makes it seem like it's all kind of within the same 48-hour period, but for all three events. But it could be up in the air unless it looks like you're Googling.
And I don't know if I'm going to find an actual date of when they announced that. I just looked up his date of death. This was slight fudging of the facts for the movie.
Yeah, I'd say it's just a bit of dramatic license there that they had to wrap it up, and it's all kind of in a nice little 48-hour period.
Yeah, fair enough. Either way, it's about 9 months after initial McCarthy episode. So anyway, we get to cut after the tribute. They cut to McCarthy or the tape of McCarthy testifying in front of the Senate, which is when you get that wonderful "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" quote.
Yeah, I don't know the senator's name, but that was a good hard line on him.
Absolutely.
We get a clip of Murrow's other show again where he looks extremely bored.
Yeah. Sig Mickelson makes his second appearance.
Well, he is in the awards ceremony bookends.
Fair enough. Okay, third appearance. And he comes and tells Joe and Shirley that he needs to see him in their see both of them in his office. Gee, I wonder what this is about.
Got to close off that storyline.
So it's basically discussing that CBS, which at the time, for anyone interested, was called the Columbia Broadcasting System, not the Central Broadcasting System.
Yeah, they made sure and say that many, many times.
And I don't know the date when they renamed that, but
yeah, I have no idea.
He discusses that the CBS has a policy that no two employees anywhere can be married, which is definitely not a standard policy these days.
No.
But I'll give him this. He has to enforce the policy being the boss, but instead of firing them, he's basically telling them that fairly soon layoffs are coming anyway, and one of you can save somebody else from needlessly having to lose their job, kind of thing. So it was a classy way of letting them do it, and they took it well. I'm pretty sure Shirley immediately decided that Robert Downey Jr. was not coming back. She joked about it. She's like, "Well, I'll pack your desk up." So he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to miss this place."
I have a historical note here. Joe does leave, and he spends 6 years writing for the New York Post before returning to CBS when they changed their marital policies. Mm-hmm. And he goes on to be one of the original producers for 60 Minutes.
Excellent. Nice.
And my note for that particular talk, though, is Jeff Daniels tells them that everyone knows they are married. Nobody cares, including the viewers.
Yeah.
And then obviously Jeff Daniels hasn't been seen since the beginning of the movie. Where has he been? Hey, the whole corporation just took a swipe at Joe McCarthy, but where's Sig?
He's been in the office. He's been dealing with Paley. That's what. He's been getting his ass chewed by Paley.
He's golfing with Alcoa, trying to keep him on the dollar.
Apparently.
And Kent cigarette.
as we find out in the next scene, doesn't go so well because Paley calls both of them into his office to let them know that they've lost Alcoa as a sponsor. So so they go back and forth for a while about whether he's going to fire him, or Murrow even asks, why don't you just fire me? But they end up saying, I believe he's going to change it from a 30-minute show to a 60-minute show, take it off Tuesday nights and put it on Sunday afternoons. I'm assuming that's just a less viable time slot.
Well, the Tuesday night prime time is, like you said, people want to be entertained. They don't want to be lectured. So it's kind of the beginning of the Sunday night news programs, or Sunday morning as well. Yeah. But
but he also
60 minutes.
But he also said you get 5 episodes, and then it's done, kind of thing. So this was also the beginning of the end of See It Now.
Yes.
So and then as he leaves, Paley keeps Fred for a moment, and then a few moments later, Fred walks out, and Murrow's asking him, what did he want? He's like, well, he wants me to lay off people. Like, how about we make the first episode about the downfall of television? I was like, yep, that sounds about right.
Well, one good bit of trivia on that one also is that Paley makes the comment to Fred Friendly that you should teach journalism.
Yeah.
And Fred Friendly actually goes on to teach journalism at Columbia University.
Oh, look at you with your researching.
Never studied.
They walk. So they walk out of the room, where it pans over to a couple of televisions set in the wall, one from the London feed, one from the New York feed, and it's Eisenhower giving a speech. I don't know the specifics of this speech. I wasn't paying that much attention.
Yeah, me neither. Not at that point.
But it fades out, and we're back to the awards. This basically the second half of his award speech back in 1958.
Yeah, and that's where he's the bookend of his warning not to squander what television and the reporting of truth could be. Don't just make it lights and wires in a box. You use it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by George Clooney. Fade to black.
Brought to you by Carl's Jr. Sorry.
So this was a great movie, and I think everyone should watch it. I don't care what their taste in movie is. They should take their time. It's not a perfect movie by all means, but it's a good movie that is remarkably relevant today. It shines a light on what proper journalism should be when you have good people behind the camera and you have logical people behind the camera. It's not about right. It's not about left. It's about the facts and the truth. There was no spin on his show. Every single news outlet today will say that, we don't spin. The spin stops here, whatever. Yeah. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. This show was perfectly shown as there is no spin. These are the facts. Would you like to rebut them with your own facts? No, you don't have facts. Okay. Then these facts still stand.
And they wouldn't attack anybody. They got attacked, and they did, and kind of brushed it off. And again, went with facts. This is the kind of news that I would love to see again. But again, this goes back to people want to be entertained, not lectured.
There's no ratings in that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no ratings in truth, just entertainment. So unfortunately, this is how we got to this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those movies that should flat out be shown in every high school journalism class, or any type of this would be like a good high school government or government journalism or cinema or theater class.
Ethics, civics, law. I mean, it covers so many different rule areas there. I mean, it goes down, government overreach, journalistic decisions, political influence, sponsors, politicians are garbage. It covers so much ground with just facts.
Mm-hmm. And it's not this might happen if such and such. This actually happened.
Exactly.
This is 100% happened, which means it could happen again. And we're starting to see something of that in the whole concept with cancel culture.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so relevant today, whether it's Dave Chappelle or other things. And then this is not a political podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not get into specifics.
If you want us to, give us money. If you're going to cancel us, pay us first.
Yeah, we are in fact coin operated. So
otherwise, we're just here to say, hey, this was a good movie. So to go over our usual questions, does it hold up today? Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
In political correctness, I would say no, because it is a period piece.
That's kind of the point. And then, cultural sensitivity.
It's a period piece. That one's hard to judge.
It is kind of hard to judge, but I mean, this is again, it was real. So they were defending Serbian American, the Serbian American guy from the U.S. Air Force. They were defending the constitutional rights of the African American woman.
Absolutely. They were very respectful.
So I would say,
regardless of culture,
I would say the main protagonists definitely had cultural sensitivity, and I wouldn't say the antagonists were culturally insensitive. It wasn't cultural; it was political.
Yeah. So
I don't think McCarthy had anything against them other than he assumed that they were communists. I actually had this as my alternate version of what if the movie were told from the antagonist perspective. Now I've seen the movie Trumbo. I don't know if you ever seen that one with
I have not. I know it's got Bryan Cranston in it, but no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, with Bryan Cranston. Excellent movie. It's very good, but it tells the story from a Hollywood director who's been blacklisted perspective. But this particular story, if it were actually told from McCarthy's perspective, I think it would be interesting, but I don't think it would be something I'd want to watch because I'd probably disagree with pretty much everything. You don't want to be the bad guy to really be the good guy kind of thing.
I do have from an alternative perspective told from Pele's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That would be neat. You're focused on Frank Langella and he's got, you get to, I would like to see the pressure he was getting.
Yeah. Told from the studio exec.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen, that could fill a whole nother hour and a half for me just watching that.
We could get an entire perspective from Sig just to see where he was for the entire movie. 80 minutes of him going out, grabbing his laundry, eating a burger, and then coming back and telling Joe and Shirley that one of them's going to be fired.
He was on a sabbatical to Aspen. He changed his name to Lloyd. He went with his friend Harry out to Aspen.
Yeah, where the beer flows like wine. I mean, another one. Who is this movie for? I'd say pretty much anyone today.
Every American.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, not just American. And not even just American. There are plenty of other people in the world that some type of political environment where it's something like this, let alone there are existing political environments where things like this aren't still happening.
That's something a commie would say. What do you mean there's people not American? Wait, dude? Pinko.
Dude, look at our subscribers list. Shut up.
We love you, Romania. Keep listening. Somehow still on the charts in Romania. Don't know why. But you're awesome.
But we like it. As far as recasting,
I can't picture anybody playing Ed Murrow, though. Of today's actors,
no, I think
in that age,
he nailed that. I think he nailed that perfectly.
As far as a different version, I put a comedy would be interesting if they did this as almost like Office or Scrubs kind of comedy.
you imagine cutting to Edward R. Murrow just staring at the camera like Jim.
I mean, with the heavy material that they're talking about, it could be quite tone deaf at times.
You say that I'm picturing like an Aaron Sorkin style West Wing where the camera's following them, just talking really fast, walking around the hallways of the entire thing.
Veep style. Yeah. Make this whole hour and a half movie like Veep style. I could totally see that now. Where the camera cuts and then you've got Murrow and Fred Friendly cussing at each other, or where are my goddamn cigarettes? I want my Kents.
Now, for me, I went a little different. I went for a musical. just because I think it would be funny as hell to have this serious of a topic be done in Broadway style.
Oh, Alcoa, please don't take your money away.
Yeah. You can have the interns run and stream an aluminum foil in the background.
Now, I definitely could see this as a stage play, kind of like 12 Angry Men style.
Yeah,
absolutely.
As I believe we found out, this one, while it may be appropriate, younger viewers, it's probably not anywhere near entertaining enough for younger viewers.
No, they thought I was watching the news.
Were there any comments of why it was in black and white?
No, actually, no. They just assumed I was watching the news still, and just kind of ignored it.
That to itself just speaks of how newsworthy this looked. So, Steve, what were your final thoughts on this movie?
I stand by my statement that this is an excellent movie. It's very well made. It's beautiful in black and white with the cinematography and the shadows and the lighting. It's really neat to watch. Plus the behind the scenes nature of that news show. I recommend this movie to anybody.
Yeah, I would go that way too. From a quote unquote movie standpoint, I would say, from a dramatic standpoint at least, it's fairly anticlimactic. There wasn't a huge build up or anything. It was, in a sense, more of a documentary. There were little things. Particularly with Hollenbeck. That was kind of the more climactic scene. That was the most climactic scene in it. I think this is more, Clooney seems to wanted to tell this story.
I agree with that.
Like it goes right up there with like some of the more recent documentary type movies that you've seen, like Richard Jewell. It might be a little more dramatized for nowadays, but it was because the director just wanted to tell the story. I love the use of the real footage instead of trying to reenact it. They didn't reenact anything they didn't have to. They had the main cast and and some of the main antagonists or some of the side antagonists like the army people. But it was actually McCarthy. It was actually Liberace. It was actually Eisenhower in that speech. It was actually Milo Radulovich. Annie Lee Moss. Those were the real people.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So I found myself being kind of torn as to trying to go for a rating on this from an entertaining aspect versus from a informational aspect, because it can go either way.
I agree with that. So, Aaron, who would you like to nominate for the Cinema Decon Hall of Fame?
So this to me is a no question. It's easy to find one person that truly stands out on this one, and it's going to be David Strathairn as Murrow.
See, I went with Clooney.
You went with Clooney.
Well, because he's also the writer and director. This was his movie. He made this movie happen. It was his passion project. I don't see the movie. I mean, Strathairn was great, but I just have Clooney as that triple threat making this movie happen.
I do see your point to it, but I don't know. I truly love Strathairn's performance in this one.
Fantastic performance. I can't fault him for that. I think he lost the Oscar to Philip Seymour Hoffman for Capote, which, I mean, that's some stiff competition there.
Very true.
But he was nominated, and so was Clooney for Best Director, I think, too, and Best Picture. Mm-hmm. I'll go with Strathairn, but Fred Friendly's character wasn't anything special. I mean, because Clooney was obviously behind the camera as well. But yeah, that was a tour de force performance by Strathairn. All right, congratulations to David Strathairn. I apologize if I've been saying his last name incorrectly this whole time. I'm not sure. But David Strathairn, Cinema Decon Hall of Fame.
Now's the time on our show where we rank the movie based on our fan review while also adding in the IMDb rating. This 10-point scale and the average will put the movie in our mega list. For me, I thought this was, again, it was a great movie from an informational aspect. It was very interesting topic, one that I'm somewhat familiar with before and obviously a little more familiar with now. In that aspect, I treat this more as kind of a dramatized documentary than dramatic movie. But still, it's something like we both said, I think it's something that everyone should watch just from the informational aspect of it. As I've said before, I love the excellent use of the real footage instead of trying to recreate sections, which it's not something that would be done much today. It's probably a lot easier to do in black and white as well, because you have that much more footage or historical footage to go over. From a dramatic, like entertaining standpoint, it again, like I said, it was pretty anticlimactic because it was more real, and that's what life is. It's just a series of down notes. So I ended up giving this a 6.7. Okay,
good solid score on the upper side of the scale. So I did enjoy this movie quite a bit. You are correct as far as it was anticlimactic because you kind of know that McCarthyism ends. There's really no big final act. I did really enjoy the behind the scenes look of that newsroom and the care that Clooney took in kind of just presenting all of that at face value. There really wasn't any dramatic license that I could see that was kind of thrown in there. No personal messaging, nothing from, this was made in 2005, so even still nothing from the 2000s like forced into the period piece. It was just, as it was, an honest period piece. However, still that Joe Shirley storyline, just every time they're on screen and talking about their love life, it drags the movie down because it has nothing to do with McCarthyism and journalistic ethics or government overreach, nothing. So I take a few points off there, but my overall score is a 7.
All right. We take both of our scores and combine it with the IMDb rating, which for this movie is a 7.4.
By our scores combined, Good Night and Good Luck comes out to 7.03, which puts this movie in 5th place, below Tremors, but above Wet Hot American Summer.
Oh, that is such a travesty. Nothing should be above Wet Hot American Summer. I was actually discussing this recently with a buddy that I play hockey with. It was a Jewish kid that just moved down from New York and has never seen that. And had gone to Jewish summer camp. So I was like, so you've obviously seen Wet Hot American Summer. And he's like, no, what's that?
Oh my God.
You need to listen to our podcast.
Would you like to listen to my podcast?
Would you like to play a game? Yeah.
All right. Before we spin the numbers, do you want to go through and media pitch what you are watching or listening to now?
Actually, yeah. There's a new show that just actually came out last week off of, I believe it's on Prime, Amazon Prime. But it is one of those shows where they dumped 4 episodes to start out with, and then are doing the rest of them on a week-by-week basis, which really pisses me off because I got hooked in the first 2 episodes. But this is a different take on I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Is that actually the title?
Yes. Okay. It's I Know What You Did Last Summer, which it was interesting for me to find out that the old 90s, was it 90s?
Yeah.
The old
90s.
Jennifer Love Hewitt movie was actually based on a book, which I didn't know. So this is, it was loosely based on a book, and this is also loosely based on the same book. So that it's a completely different cast.
So it's not like a 25 years later. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's a completely different storyline. It's just the same concept. It's these 6 high school age kids in Hawaii, in a small town in Hawaii. Definitely a lot of NC-17 scenes, or at least some good rated R ones. But it's definitely more relevant today. Like one of the kids is like an Instagram star.
Okay.
There are 5 episodes out as of now. The 6th episode is dropping this Friday.
So my pitch, not going to be a surprise to too many, but if you haven't seen this show, you should. Squid Game. I got to put my recommendation behind Squid Game. That was easily the most compelling series I've watched all year. I put it on top of Loki or WandaVision or any of the other ones that I've watched. I mean, that was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
For those that don't know out there, Squid Game is a show on Netflix where very rich people lure in people who are struggling for money to play in a series of children's games to win a lot of money. and I won't give any spoilers at all. But
yeah, that's all we need.
That's all you need.
It is an excellent show. It's Korean. Yeah, it was a Korean show, it was one of the things where when I first saw I had heard about it. I heard all the buzz about it. So I went and watched a trailer on YouTube, and the trailer on YouTube was entirely subtitled.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I'm not the biggest fan of reading movies, but I've heard so much good things about it, and the trailer looks pretty cool, so I'll watch it. Thankfully, when I actually watched it,
it was dubbed.
It was English dubbed.
The dubbing was done quite well.
Yeah, it's not bad.
But yeah, it's crazy. There's ups and downs and twists and turns, and it's pretty awesome. So, and I cannot give away any more if you haven't watched it yet. I would also like to mention a new podcast that is launching next week from the Sidereal Media Group, Music Rewind. This is a new show where we bring on a guest to talk about their favorite album. There's currently 4 episodes on Music Rewind's Patreon, but the actual official launch publicly will be next Monday on November 1st, depending on when this particular episode drops. I don't know whenever I get off my ass and edit it and post it. Please check out that other podcast when you get a chance, and let me know what you think. All right, so now we will spin.
Spin that wheel.
$74.
Ooh, low number.
Low number.
74. What do we got?
Appropriate for Halloween, kind of.
Fair. Oh, absolutely.
Critters.
Dun, dun, dun.
The 1986 film Critters.
Oh man, I haven't seen this since I was a kid.
This is gonna be terrible.
Yeah, but it could be very good, terrible. This is one of those ones. There were so many movies like this.
This is gonna be honest to God terrible. Oh, it's gonna be an odd pre-watch for this one too.
Well, that's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we hope you stay with us through this little experiment. What did you think of Good Night and Good Luck? Let us know on our socials, and we'll be sure to tell you how wrong you are.
Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Check out our website in the show notes and see the full list of movies we'll be covering and our rankings thus far. You can also visit us on our Patreon, where we'll try to post some outtakes before the final cut.
We'll see you next time on Cinema Decon.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.